Alright, it's another day out in the garage, and we are now starting the process to install the top. If you haven't seen the top removal video, I'll put a link to it up in the corner of this video, so you can go back and start from the start, so to speak. We haven't started the actual top installation yet. We're actually putting on the latches. I took the latches off in order to just clean up the frame and get it painted, so we're just reinstalling the convertible top latches. We were going to install some new straps that Doc had sent us, just the, we're going to call them safety straps, or I think they're called anti-rattle straps. Anyway, we installed one and unsnapped it and the actual button came right off. So we figured the quality is not so good on these, so we'll just throw those aside and we'll stick with the originals. There's nothing wrong with those. So the originals are going back on the car. So there is a little plate behind these fasteners or catches, and it's a little bit difficult to get them lined up, so it's a little bit tricky, but we're muddling our way through it. So after we get these reattached, we'll get on to the top installation. Alright, if you haven't watched the previous video, you'll know that we're following this guide, the convertible top guide for the Alfa Romeo Spider, and we're now on the top installation part. So if I'm looking at instruction number 1, it's talking about the installation of the cables within the top. Now, I mentioned that the top from Alfaholics already came with new cables installed. The only problem is those cables are actually riveted up here at the front, and we don't believe we can install them over the existing rivet. So the cables that are on the car are in good shape, so I think we're just going to stick with the original cables and we're going to feed them through. So we'll use the existing cables, or not the existing cables, but the cables that are supplied with the Alfaholics top. We'll use those to actually pull the existing cables through the top all the way to the back to the turnbuckles. So we're just going to get ready to do that now. So the first step is to lay the top on and install the cables through the top guides. Okay, a quick little video about the cable run, so you can actually see it before we actually put the fabric on the roof here. So obviously the cable is got a rivet up here, is riveted to the top frame section, but as you move back here, you'll see a hole in the second bow. So the cable will feed through this hole. Then it exits that through a little slot and another hole down here on the bow, and then goes into the turnbuckle. And you'll notice that we've got new turnbuckles, I call them. They're actually called soft top tensioners. So anyway, we've got new ones of those that we've installed. Just wanted to give you a quick video of that before we actually drape the top on the top. Alright, we just got the top draped on the bows, and here is that cable that's already pre-fed through the Alfaholics top. Here is the stock cable. So what we're going to do is use the Alfaholics cable to actually fish the stock cable back through the top. You can see it here, it runs through a pocket in the top. So we're just going to fish that through. Normally you might need a piece of mechanics wire if you don't have a piece of wire in your new top, a piece of mechanics wire, and just tape the wire to it and pull it back through. So you just have to fish the wire back through. Alright, we're going to do that now. Alright, so we've got the wire fed through the top portion. Now it wants you, as step number 2, to go back now and feed it through these holes that we talked about earlier. So in the bows, the top bow hole here, and then the hole here, and down towards the tensioner itself. So just a quick look at that tensioner arrangement. So there's a little locking collar up the top here, then the actual adjuster here, and then in the bottom there's a spring on the inside of the adjuster, and then another little locking collar on the bottom. We just left them loose for now. Apparently there's supposed to be a little piece of vinyl here as a protector on the bottom. What we'll probably do is just shrink tube this later, just to protect that end, but that's where we're at here. So cable's fed up through here, comes out here, and through the top. Alright, the next step is to install the front of the top. So we've got the front fitting here over the frame, and we've got, it says basically, when properly positioned, top piping will press against the windshield bow. So this would be the windshield bow here, and then the side flaps overlap the windshield post gasket. So here's the side flaps, and they are overlapping the gasket here on the A post. So I think we're pretty good as far as the location is concerned there. I think that looks pretty good. So then the next step is to actually start gluing the fabric to the underside here before we actually put the rail in with the seal. So we're going to start doing that process. All right, so here's the area where we're applying the glue, just on the bottom of the front header rail. And we're going to do, of course, that all the way across. It warns you not to use excessive glue here. So we're just going to be using it sparingly. We just got the old piece of carpet here just to protect the top and the car and ourselves from getting any glue anywhere. So we'll just go ahead. We're going to obviously apply glue to both sides, to the top side and to the roof, and let it set up before we stick them together. Alright, so we've got the front edge of the top glued and in place. Now, according to the manual, the next step is to install that seal channel and the seal itself, but we've decided that we want to wait, and we're going to skip and come back to that because we want to make sure that obviously you're going to be punching or drilling holes for rivets and riveting that rail in, and you only have really one chance to do that. So we'd prefer probably to skip to the next step, which is fitting the rear of the top to the the water channel at the rear. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll come back and work back at the front of the top. It's not going anywhere since it's glued now anyway, so we're not worried about that moving at the front. But let's move to the back here and start concentrating on the rear top attachment and water seal. All right, the rear rail is back installed with the water seals for the channels back there. Well, that's looking good. It's all been tightened down. So we're good to go there. We'll move on to the next step. All right, we're just doing a quick fit check, and everything is looking good. We've got the top latched. All the fasteners are in the back and tightened down now. It is definitely, what do you call that, drum tight?
Yeah.
So looks good so far, so we'll continue on to the next step. Let me look that up. All right, so we're at this point here where we have the retainer channels installed loosely on the back of the convertible top. Those are tightened towards the end of the process. We're now moving on to gluing the fabric overlay to the cross members. As mentioned in a previous video, there's a certain direction you need to follow for each of the bows. So we're going to follow the manual here as far as the installation is concerned of that. So Elin's going to get in the car and we'll work on gluing that fabric on the inside to the actual frame rails. All right, not sure how well you're able to see, but the first bow is done. Looks quite nice. It's got quite a nice lining on the inside of this top. So that's what that looks like. So we'll continue on to the second bow. Yeah, I thought I'd just take a quick video of the wrapping directions for the bows, so you can see which way is the front of the car if you look at the seat back. So bow number 1 here, number 2, number 3, and the wrapping directions. Okay, the next step is to attach the top to side supports, and these are the little metal plates that are in the side of here. There's a little fabric flap and pocket on this top. It's a little bit different. You can see the little pocket here. I think you can probably see that. There's a little pocket here and a little flap. It's a little bit different than the factory top, which kind of just had you roll the material around that piece of metal. Here is the actual stiffener, or the metal piece that goes within inside the fabric. And so we're fitting those now. We need to apply some glue as well. So Elin's just on the other side doing that and getting ready to apply this to the B-post. Okay, so that's what the B-post looks like, and we've got the 3 rivets riveted in here nicely on both sides. It's kind of dark over there, but that's what it looks like, nice and clean, so it looks good. So now we are going to move back to the front seal and get that worked on. The next step, if you're following the guide and following along as far as the instructions are concerned, are to attach the side corners, front corners of the top, but we need to go back now and do the front seal before we do that. So we're going to do that now. Elin said he's starting to feel sick now, so he's going to go home. So anyway, this we're not looking forward to this next task, but we'll see how we do. Right, so we're riveting in the channel for the seal. So we're just marking out the holes here and going ahead and riveting that in place before we fight with the new seal. All right, the channel is riveted in place, and we're working with that new seal trying to get it into the channel. And we're going to see if we can slide it versus tucking it, and maybe use a little bit of silicone or some sort of lube to maybe get it to slide from one side to the other. So these seals can traditionally be difficult to get installed. So we'll see how we do. We'll tell you what works in the end, if it works in the end. All right, the seal is in. May need to come this way a little bit more. I've got some excess there on the other side. It's basically a two-person job. It took us about an hour of sort of inching it along the track. We used some Dawn dish detergent as our lubricant along the bottom of the seal and in the channel. Elin pushed and made sure that the groove in the bottom of the seal was in the track, and I sort of inched it along and pulled from this end and pushed and pulled and pushed and pulled. And about an hour later, with lots of effort, we made it to the other side. So seal is in. So we're going to figure out where we need to trim the seal, and then we need to figure out where this piece attaches, or how this is going to attach to here. And this would normally be with, like I said, a T-bolt. In our case, it was a rivet. We're going to decide whether we want to rivet this or bolt this, but we'll figure that out. All right, we have the top up and latched again, and here is the excess seal on the passenger side that we're going to trim. And let me just wander around to the driver's side. Obviously, we have a lot more seal on this side, as we didn't need to pull it all the way through, so we've got quite a bit of extra, or excess. So that looks good there. So this is the other piece that we need to affix to the top with that bolt or rivet up to the front here, and there's a hole in the frame where that attaches to, so that's looking good. So getting down to the brass tacks. Almost done with this job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just working on the position of that front flap, and what we're going to do is we've decided to bolt it. So I've got a small bolt here with a nylock, so it won't loosen up. So stainless steel nylock and bolt, and a couple of washers, and we should be good to go, as opposed to a rivet there. So we just marked a location. We're just going to attach that to the hole in the frame that's there for it. All right, we're on to the final step, and that's the edge guide. So here is the edge guide, and that basically gets affixed over here, something like this. Now, there's a Phillips screw that holds this. We've got to find the hole for the Phillips screw. There's a plate in behind here that screws to, so we got to figure out how we want to do that. We don't want to poke holes. You found a hole already over there, so that's good. So we'll do the same for this side. All right, we just put the windows up in the car, and they're looking super. So nice fit. Fits flush with the seal, so it should get a nice weatherproof seal there. That looks really good. And we'll throw it around to the other side. The windows are a little dirty, but again, nice seal there as well along the top. So that looks good. So I think what we'll do now is we'll remove the protective cover for the window. There's one on the inside that looks like it needs to be cut out. It's held in by a couple spots of fabric. And then we'll peel the tape here and remove the rear one, and we'll get one final look at the new top installed. All right, the fabric's been removed from the, or the protective fabric's been removed from the rear window. It looks good. There's a few wrinkles, but obviously they're going to work themselves out when there's a little bit of heat. There's a few wrinkles here on the driver's side. You can probably see here. Just a couple from the packing. But they'll work themselves out. Nice and clear, obviously. No yellowing like you get on an old top. So that looks pretty darn good. And the top is nicely fitted. Again, nice and tight. So happy with that. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to adjust the cables as required. We're going to go back through, read up and adjusting the tensioning cables. And that's pretty much the last thing we need to do as far as fitting the top is concerned. Of course, we need to fit the remaining bits of interior back in afterwards, but this video is primarily just talking about fitting the new convertible top. So we'll go through the adjustment procedure that's outlined in the manual for the turnbuckles, and that'll be it. I'll come back with one more last update for the night. Alright guys, it's the next day, and I've just come out to the garage to do a final ending video segment for this convertible top installation series, and I thought I'd give you a better view of the overall top. So we'll just maybe wander around the car a little bit. So maybe see it a little bit more detail. Again, it's quite a nice tight fit, although it is latchable. I'm sure it'll loosen up a little bit more when the sun hits it. Maybe a little bit better look at that front seal all the way along the front. And that's sealing up nice with the windshield frame, so you won't get any water up under there. And of course we've got the seal up under that. So that looks nice. I'll give you a quick interior view here. So we did go with a small bolt up here. Again, this could have been riveted, but I like the bolt option here. It's nice and clean, it won't rust. So in the back here, and it's going to be hard to see in here, but we have the water channel back in place, which actually covers up the mounting studs, so you can't see those. And of course the carpet will cover up the back panel and go up to that water shield. So that looks good. Again, the lining on the inside is quite nice. Again, it's quite dark in here, but it's quite a nice lining on the interior. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's move around to the here are the edge guides here installed, and that looks nice. Nice tight fit on this side, no wrinkles, nice seams, nice window fitment. Alright, so there's a bit of a video overview of the top. Let me just give you some final words before we end this segment. Alright, let's have a little bit of a garage chat to end this convertible top installation series. So I'm sure that you're going to have a few questions. I know that the first question is probably going to be, or one of the first questions is going to be, well, how much did it cost? So if you look on the Alfaholics website, I believe this top sells for about 470 pounds sterling. So obviously, depending on where you're from, you'll need to do the currency conversion. I believe from a Canadian dollar perspective, we live in Canada, so from a Canadian dollar perspective, I think that equates to about $750 Canadian just to purchase the top. Of course, then there's shipping involved, there's also duty or taxes involved. So by the time I think it gets to us here in Canada and goes through all the paperwork process, taxes, etc., it's probably about $1,000 for this in particular top. So as mentioned, this is an Alfaholics top. It is made, or as the fabric is called, German mohair. It is made by Pininfarina in Italy, and it's a Hart's cloth material. So there's the information on the top itself. So the next question I'm probably going to get is, what was the level of difficulty to install the top? So I don't know if I want to put a 1 to 10 as far as difficulty is concerned. I know skill sets differ. As mentioned, I had not done an Alfa Romeo top previously, nor had Elin, my helper, done an Alfa top previously, but we both have experience doing other tops on other two-seat convertibles. So we put that experience into use here to work on this. Again, there's going to be some variables to consider when you're talking about how easy it is to install this top. For example, this car is actually in quite good shape. It's got fairly low kilometers on it. It's got about 56,000 original kilometers on it and does not have much rust. So if you are working with a rusty or a rusty example of this car, something like the rear rail with those 22 studs and nuts, I'm sure that could be a real challenge if your car is quite rusty trying to get those fasteners off the studs back there. And I'm sure if the studs are rusted, you might be missing them, or you might have a fear of breaking them off. Regardless, I think depending on the condition of your car, that can make a big change in the number of hours you spend on taking the original top off the car, not to mention putting the new top on the car. If you've not put a convertible top on the car before or taken a convertible top off the car before, I can highly recommend this this catalog that I showed at the beginning of the video, which we primarily followed along pretty much step by step. Although the steps are there as a guideline. Obviously on the install we actually deviated from the step-by-step guide, but in general this guide was very good. If you're a newbie at this, it's a really good step-by-step guide for, as mentioned, both the top removal process and the top installation process. I highly recommend it if you're thinking of doing this by yourself at home, that you get this guide or at least do some research. Hopefully you'll find this video and you'll find some good threads on some of the Alfa online boards. There are some good write-ups there that you should do some research before you get in. You should try to learn as much as you can about installing the top before you attempt to do it. Some of my viewers are also interested in the comparison between working on the Alfa and working on a Triumph TR6 or 250, for example. As far as the convertible tops are concerned, I can tell you that it's definitely easier, I think, to put a convertible top on a Triumph versus the Alfa Romeo. With the Alfa Romeo, there's a lot of inside the car work. For example, gluing the top bows or undoing those rear fastener rails with those 22 fasteners, or working on the B-posts with the rivets on the interior. So all that work pretty much has to be done inside the car, which can be a little bit challenging, especially if you're a bigger guy like myself. It can be challenging to work inside the car, particularly if you're in a hot climate and it's can turn out to be a bit of a sweatbox in there. With Triumphs, most of the work is done outside of the car, so I would have to give the edge to Triumphs as far as ease of ability on replacing a convertible top. I guess the next question will be, how many hours did it take to actually do the complete removal and installation of this new top? So as you know, I did this over two different sections, let's call them. So the first being the top removal. In the previous video, there will be a link to it at the beginning of this video. So as far as top removal is concerned, again, that's something going to be done with one person. It's always nice to have an extra set of hands. In my case, I actually had Elin here, as Elin really wanted to see the arrangement of things like the front seal, for example, how that was going to be going back together once we installed the new top. So it's always good to have, as mentioned, an extra set of eyes when you're tearing things apart, so you get them back together in the same manner. So it took us basically an hour to strip the old top off, so that would be 2 man-hours with obviously 2 people working on it, an hour each. So an hour to strip it. Elin left after that, after we had the top stripped off, and then I was left here to work by myself. So as you saw in the previous video, I ended up stripping all of the glue off of the old bows, the glue off the B-post, and then cleaning out the rear channel and checking the drains. So all told, that probably took me about an additional 3 hours to do the stripping and painting and prep to put the new top back on. So you're looking at probably about 4 to 5 hours. Basically, I do some videoing, obviously, so that takes a little bit of time in there. So I would say roughly 4 to 5 hours to do the prep, to remove the top, and to get the framework and car ready for the top to go back on the car, the new top to go back on the car. So for part 2, which is the installation of the new top, this part that you're viewing now, I would highly recommend that you have 2 people to put the top on the car. Now, of course, you can do this with one person, but I can see that it would be extremely difficult in some circumstances. For example, installing the front seal on the car, I don't know if that would be possible with one person. It took all my strength and all of Elin's strength to actually slide that seal into the channel, and I don't know if actually one person could do it. If they did do it, it would probably take them a number of hours and a heck of a lot of patience to be able to do that. So I'd highly recommend having 2 people on the install side of things. All right, how do we make out for total hours? So yesterday we started at 1 p.m. and we finished at approximately somewhere around 6:30 to 7 p.m. So we're running around the 6-hour mark, let's say. There's going to be some obviously videoing in there. might have been a few beers consumed in there, but I'm going to say that we did approximately 6 hours each, so 12 man hours to actually put this top on the car. And again, based on experience, it could be a little bit shorter for you if you've done a top previously, or it could be a little bit longer for you, or much longer for you. If your patience wears a little thin with that front seal, for example, it could take you a little bit longer to install this top if it's your first time ever installing a top on a car. So again, it's going to depend on a few different factors, but somewhere around the 12-hour mark to actually install a top fully on the car. All right, a few tips that we learned along the way during the installation that I'd like to share with you before I go as well. First thing, obviously, with a cloth top, you want to make sure that you're constantly cleaning your hands. You don't want to mark the top up, and it's very easy to do that. Whether it's a glue residue or whether it's dirt or oils from a rubber seal, for example, they'll get on the top very easily, and if you don't keep your hands clean, you're going to have a very dirty top by the end of it. So either continuously clean your hands, or if you're using rubber gloves, make sure you exchange your gloves fairly frequently so you don't get any additional marks on the top. So we were pretty careful when we were working with this top. There are a few marks, a few small marks that we'll be able to get out, just some dirt from fingers, etc., that we'll have to get out, which is no big deal. But I just want you to be conscious that you need to have clean hands when you're working with a cloth top. All right, I just want to talk a little bit about the front seal. As mentioned, that was probably the most difficult part of this top, was installing that front seal, and we anticipated that. So what worked for us was sort of a push and pull approach. So Elin was on one side of the car and feeding the channel into the rail, the metal rail, and I was pulling from the opposite side of the car. We actually lubricated the seal in the channel with dish soap. I've heard it mentioned that you can use a synthetic a silicone or a synthetic grease. Some guys will use something like a Sil-Glide, which is a white synthetic grease, to lubricate the seal. We decided just to forego that. I actually have some Sil-Glide lying around, but we didn't want to get any on the top, so we just decided we'd be safer to go with soap. So it was a push and pull approach, and it was very slow going with the seal, but we managed to do it from the driver's side all the way over to the passenger side. Again, Elin would push on the seal. He'd have a little plastic stick to sort of guide the seal in the channel while I pulled from the opposite side, and it took probably, I'm going to say, over an hour with the two of us working to get that seal in, and we finally moved it across the whole way, and obviously had to trim it a little bit. That's what you want to do. You want to pull it past where it needs to be and then trim it afterwards. So the seal is definitely a bear to get in this car. Like most cars with that type of seal, the Triumphs are no difference, although I believe the Triumphs are a little bit different as far as, are a little bit easier as far as the front seal is concerned, if you can believe that. So the front seal on this car was quite the bear, and we had a brand new and supple seal to work with. Okay, I just wanted to make a quick mention of the bows again, and the wrapping of the fabric around the bows on the inside. So not only is the direction important, which way you wrap it, but it's also very important not to wrap those bows too tightly, or you're going to put little divots in your top where you've pulled that fabric down from the inside. So make it a little bit loose is much better than being too tight. So just be cautious of that and make sure that you've not wrapped the bows on the inside and glued them too tightly, or you're going to deform the top of your top, and that won't be good. Now, I mentioned the importance of having a guide to do this project, specifically if you've not done one of these tops before, but having the guide is not the be-all and end-all. So as mentioned, Elin and I decided to change the process a little bit, particularly when it came to the front seal. We actually came back and installed that at a later time than specified in the manual. So in some cases you may need to, or if you have the experience and you decide that you want to do something a little bit out of order from the actual manual, then so be it. There are certain items or elements of the car that were different than what the actual catalog showed. For example, this B-post pocket was quite different from the original top. The original top did not have a pocket type system. It had a wraparound type system, so it was completely different than what the new top came with. So in some regards, The manual didn't really make sense when you're looking at something like a new top that has some improvements made to it. For example, the old top had a lot more fabric at the top of the top in order to rivet and screw it, or rivet and bolt it. And the new top had very little material at the front of the top, so the process is a little bit different on some of the newer tops, in particular this Alfaholics top. I can't comment on any other style of top from any other vendors, but in this particular case, some of the steps or guidelines in the manual were a little bit different. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention was the orientation of the water seal. Make sure you get that orientated correctly. If you do not, and you wrap it underneath the rail, for example, it's not going to cover the fasteners or the channel, and you may have to go back and do a redo on that. Ask me how I know, which is quite the process to have to go and undo all of the fasteners in order to put this sheeting back on correctly. So just a quick note on that. Pay attention when you take it off as to the orientation so you can put it back properly. All right, I've done my best to go through the entire process of how to install a convertible top on an S2 Alfa Romeo Spider. I've probably missed some things that you maybe wanted answered. I've done my best to try to share with you my experience, and if I've missed something in particular that you want to hear about, please ask it in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer you. As far as the project is concerned, the next step forward on this is the actual finishing of the interior carpet. I've actually already started on that while the bows were drying. I actually started on the rear carpeting of the car, and that is in process. That will be in a separate video. Tomorrow is tire day. We're going to have the tires installed tomorrow, so I've got a window in the afternoon to get those dropped off and exchanged. So hopefully we'll get out here tomorrow and you will see the new Vredestein tires on the car. All right, that's it for now, guys. Thanks for watching, thanks for commenting, and thanks for subscribing. We will see you back out here tomorrow.